I have a question. I don't know what plugged in means, and
Say that again?
you said that this committee was plugged in.
Right,
as-
they're getting information from these law firms on what to vote on.
Well, that's,
I'm getting it from this committee.
please.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really need to clarify this because as a
And it's
member,
up to the people of this committee who know that and told me to state it themselves.
okay, well, that's them.
But I'm having it investigated, and yes, I believe that is exactly what's happening.
Yeah, please.
Yes, ma'am, you may say what you want.
Thank you. As a member of this committee, I can tell you that I'm not plugged into anything. I was in a.
I can tell you that this committee is. Okay? In fact,
Excuse me. Can the representative finish, please? Thank you.
As an elected official, I work for all the people of the state of New Hampshire. And while I'm in this committee and while I'm in the House of Representatives, so I take great pride in that.
so you know of no corruption?
Excuse
Well, let's wait a minute. Do you know of any corruption?
I would like for you to answer my question prior to me answering that. What I'm
Exactly.
asking is, what is plugged in?
What is plugged in? That means telling the committee what they wanted voted on so that these law firms have more of an edge in court and the people have less and less power.
Thank you, Mr.
That's what
Gill.
I'm saying.
I'd like to get back on the substance of the bill, not what's
Well,
going
if
on
the
in
bill-
the court, sir.
If you're having the bill, so we're saying the bill is for the betterment of the children. Are you kidding me? What's been done? That's a Band-Aid. And we're talking to Foley, and Foley is one of the most corrupt judges in the state. There's a network of corrupt judges.
Sir, if you can't stay on the
Well, this
substance
is
of
the bill. You're trying to influence the judges to be more fair when it comes to children. They're not. It's not gonna be. It's still down to their own discretion. It's gonna be who makes the most money each and every time. You know
Thank you,
something? You
Mr.
don't know,
Gill.
the committee doesn't know that.
Mr. Gill, we have a question here for you.
So, you support the bill, but what I'm hearing is that the bill's not gonna do anything. It's
The
gonna
bill's
be
not
the
gonna
same
do
old same.
anything because the system
So-
broke. You're arranging the furniture
So
and the
how do you
house is on
support the
fire.
bill? What do you support of this bill? How do you support this bill?
I support the bill if you turn around and start arresting the judges. You start turning around. Listen, if you put, I don't care what law you put in, but if you put it inside a corrupt system, it's still gonna turn out bad.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your time and your
Was
testimony.
that all the questions?
I see no further questions.
Well, see, there was.
I'm sorry,
No, I apologize.
go right ahead.
In the interest of time, are there any last points that you wanted to make? Just to kind of-
I'm saying that this can be changed. You owe it to the children and the families of this house, of this estate. You know why you have one of actually the worst heroin problem? There's a couple reasons, but that's it. So my last statement is you've got to take action. People are looking to this committee for help. You are representing them. They see you as one of them. They don't see you as a lawyer. How I talked to the people in the committee was that I wanted to come forward with a group. Some people that were already here to tell you what's happening, to only find out that you know.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You got another question?
We have two questions. You put your hands up at the same time. Who wants to go first?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Mr. Gill, thank you for your testimony. I'm trying to summarize, brought a lot of information forward.
Sorry, I apologize. Go right ahead, Representative.
So I'm trying to summarize, I think what you're telling us is the bill we're talking about, HB 1118, we should pass that, because it's probably, I think you would admit it's a small step in the right direction. But then, after we pass that, we should do a little more digging. And I believe we've passed, if the chair may correct me, I believe we've passed a committee to study some of these issues, or
Yes, Representative, you're correct.
in the previous bill. Maybe that, I'm trying to find an avenue.
You know what,
Take the
nothing's going to
appropriate
matter
action.
too much until you clean out the corruption. If it's corrupt, you're putting just a different hat on You know, it's corruption. So this bill,
Thank you.
it looks like a smokescreen to me.
Representative Itzel, you have a question?
Yes, would you believe that the equity jurisdiction of our family court is defined as notwithstanding law to the contrary, that means in spite of law to the contrary, that they have the powers of equity in all of their cases to do?
Are you referring to the judge?
The judge, the master, whatever, that in fact, that we state in the equity jurisdiction of our laws, of the family court, that they have the power to ignore our laws.
Well, yes. So look what happened.
There's no overseeing.
Excuse me, no comments from the audience, please.
Right. I mean, they left it to the judge's own discretion. All these rules and laws don't mean anything. And they are corrupt. I mean, I just gave you an example of Judge Anderson. You understand? He wrote his decision before they had the hearing and signed it, and then reversed himself when he found out. So there shouldn't be a question. That is hard evidence that you have a New Hampshire judge that was corrupt and shown you that. In fact, it was against that woman who left. She would have lost her home. She came to see me. It was predatory lending, and they tried to cover it up. So there is corruption with these judges, and that's what we got to do first. That's it.
Any other questions? Thank you for your testimony. I do want to read a note. Mr. Gill, you have, unfortunately, you have offended some committee members with your allegations that we are plugged in.
Excuse me, say this again?
You have offended some of the committee members stating that we are, to quote you, plugged in.
Right. I'm glad you're
The
offended.
majority of us are not plugged in, sir.
I believe you are.
You're out of order. Sit. Please have a seat.
No, I'm
sir.
not sitting. We're leaving.
That's fine,
And
sir.
you are corrupt. And your associates think you are.
That's
And I will
fine,
make
sir.
it, and I will make it public. So I'm glad you're offended. You should be.
Why
Mr.
did you
Gill, if
silence
you do
him
not leave the
if you're
room
not
now, I
corrupt?
will call security.
Listen, I just said I
Thank you,
will.
sir.
That's all right.
Why did you silence him? I don't understand.
I have a.
That means you're plugged in.
Ed Bryans who would like to speak.
You're plugged in.
Ed Bryans, is he still here?
Right here.
Thank you, Mr. Bryans.
Take a breath for a moment.
I don't own any of what was just said, so it's good he got it off his chest. We're good. So,
Call me up, my name is Ed Bryans.
Yes.
I live in Marlboro, New Hampshire. I'm a 20-year resident of Cheshire County. It was mentioned before about the Thomas Ball situation. Same judge was hearing my case at the same time. Same sick feeling, same, my life is ruined in front of me. So I understand why the emotions run deep here. I've been through it. I've run into every, I want to call it corrupt piece of the puzzle. I've had guardian ad litem that have quasi-judicial immunity that can lie and commit perjury, write reports of things that don't exist. In my situation, my daughter was taken on her 3rd birthday. My last words to my little girl dropping her off to daycare was cake, presents, and friends. When I showed up at 4 o'clock to pick up my little girl, my wife, who had filed for divorce, had decided to claim that I was a flight risk. That met the criteria for imminent danger in the ex parte motion. I wasn't even notified that there was even a hearing that was taking place during the day. I show up at 4 o'clock, the visitation center, or I'm sorry, the daycare center had had a court order faxed to them stating that I had no contact with my daughter. I have a whole bunch of notes out here, but a lot of it's been covered in respect to the committee. I won't cover the same beliefs I have about the children that are more at risk for drugs and alcohol by not having a fit parent, a fit father, a fit mother in their life.
may I ask you, sir, excuse me, do you have written testimony
just notes to myself, I'd be happy to provide a copy of it.
Thank
and-
you, sir.
And I appreciate
I
that.
apologize for interrupting you. Go on.
Not a problem, and I'm deviating, I did that for my benefit, so I could stay on track, and because a lot of it was covered, and a lot of statements are made here, I don't wanna burden you with that. So what I do wanna stress the point of is that it took 2 years, after 5 administrative delays, to have my day in court, to simply go into court, and at that point, I had the guardian ad litem on the stand for 8 hours. It took 2 days in court. The next day, various other witnesses that I put. I represented myself personally. Agree or not with Mike Gill, I'm sorry, I don't have a $5 million offer to a lawyer, but I was told that I was a despised litigant. No lawyer would take my case because I had to expose the corruption that was taking place. I mean, the system was rigged against me from the very beginning. When you take a child on an allegation of being a flight risk from a man who's owned his home for 18 years, that's self-employed, that has 2 other children living in the state, there was no bearing to that at all. It was fictitious, but it met the criteria. So there began the exchange of money. I'm now paying child support based on my income, married, filing jointly, which the emotional damage, my income dropped in half. So I have 2 other children I'm made to care for with half the income, with child support based, basically 60% of what I was making, I'm paying the child support. They claim I'm a flight risk. Next thing you know, I lose my house. Now fast forward 2 years when I get my day in court, and I had all the documentation, I had my ducks in a row. I was able to lay it all out there. The long and short of it, the guardian ad litem fee increases were denied. And I did that myself, without any help from a lawyer. I walked out of there with 50-50 joint custody. So 2 years of my life with my daughter was stolen. And I can't get that back. It would appear that the system worked, but what didn't work is that I now have a house that I've worked long and hard for, I have nothing. When I got my daughter back on this allegation that I was a flight risk, at that point I was living in a motorhome. So who really believed this? Even the lawyer, my ex's lawyer himself, offered me every other weekend, 4 days a month with my daughter. Their initial claim to me being a flight risk was a true fear. Who the heck would give that child to a person, 48 hours, I could be anywhere. So the thing was a joke. Another piece of that, those court orders with my ex-wife's financial affidavit and my financial affidavit, side by side, she made a little bit more money than I did. I was still ordered to continue to pay the same amount of child support, even though my new orders were now 50-50, physical, legal custody. Fortunately, in talking to my ex-wife, we were able to come to a conclusion that I said I was going to take it to the next level, Superior Court, and fight it. We filed a joint motion that we no longer wanted the state involved in our lives. We would care for our daughter equally on our times, and if together we had to pull together, we would. I can look at it now, this is 2 years ago. My ex and I have become friends again. My daughter benefits from both a mom and dad. Now that love her, that work together to support her. The last 2 months, my daughter has been student of the month in the school. So, to me, this supports the bill in a sense, that 2 fit parents taking care of their children right from the start. We could have not had the 2 years of conflict that everybody profited from. I don't have money to pay for my kids to go to college. I don't have a house to leave them, but I have my daughter. And I moved up from a mobile home to a little apartment, so.
Good for you.
Life is good.
Your 3 minutes are up.
Thank you.
But I would like to open this up to any questions from any of the committee members. If anybody has any questions for Mr. Bryans, Representative Edson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's kind of a sidebar. Really what you're saying is if we had had the law as proposed in place when you got divorced, you could have bypassed 2 years of agony. But in those 2 years of agony, you were obviously stripped of your accumulated wealth, as was your daughter in essence. Where did that wealth end up?
Honestly, I'm still reeling from it with a foreclosed house. I mean, gave me a 1099 that I actually owe that money. And I'm still fighting to deal with that. So, I mean, my future looks bleak. I mean, I work every day. I like to jokingly say, had they just said, hey, give us your house, we'll give you your kid, I would have given it up voluntarily and saved everybody a whole lot of hassle. You know, you mentioned a couple points, and I'm sorry to just jump at one little piece to that. Because I also have 2 other children, they were denied their relationship with their half sibling as well. So, I mean, the damage all the way around, and it affected them as well. Because what happened with this child now affects them, and I'm not looking to kick the bucket soon, but, you know, there goes their inheritance too. And, you know, I'm gonna make another go at it, but I'm just now, I guess you could say, emotionally beginning to recover because it's such a devastating situation to deal with. And so much so, and, you know, don't mean to scare this committee, but I watch what goes on in this committee. I became interested in a lot of other things. In my little area of Marlboro, I'm hoping to run for state rep. And I hope to ask to be on this committee because I want to make a difference.
Any further questions? Representative O'Leary.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Mr. Bryans, for your testimony. The remarkable piece of your testimony was that it worked out. And so I'm trying to pull that thread a little. Why did it work out?
I can give you the, I guess you could call it the changing point. I mean, for 2 years, I mean, when I would get my days in court, I wasn't a very nice person. The guardian ad litem, I had asked for her to be charged with theft of services because the money had already been forced to give her. She wasn't doing anything with it. So the more I would push her buttons, the more she would take from me. Her final recommendation to the courts was that I have my daughter for 6 hours a year on Father's Day. So, I mean, who in their right mind would force a child to be with a stranger for 6 hours a year? But she was doing it directly because I had asked to arrest her. I didn't understand quasi-judicial and so forth. Now, the same with the lawyer. When he thought he was doing me this great favor of offering me every other weekend with my daughter, who in their right mind wouldn't take something after having 2 years of absence, I asked him if he was on some kind of drugs. I said, I've done nothing wrong. Why would I? So, in a sense, me not having a lawyer, I probably got away with saying some things. I called it kidnapping, I called it ransom, and I called it forcing me to fund child abuse. And that's exactly how I felt about it for those 2 years. So, 2 days before the court date, I get a call from my ex. The boyfriend, who I knew was a horrible, rotten person, had abused my daughter. She stuck her tongue out at him, and he dumped hot sauce down her mouth. So she had thrown him out. You know, I've been telling this to the guardian ad litem the whole time, but, well, I'm an angry, bad person because you're stealing my child. So she cried, and she said, this is so wrong, keeping your daughter from you. And I said, you know, we can nip this in the bud right now, we'll just sign a mutual agreement. She chose to let her lawyer continue the case. And unfortunately, I didn't want to continue to disparage her, and I didn't want to dig her skeletons out of the closet. But when it comes down to the big day in court and you want to point out everybody's faults and so forth, if there wasn't a monetary incentive for her to initiate this in the beginning, which her and I were friends with, she's told me she was sort of manipulated into saying things to allow the system to take hold of it. And, you know, I'd love to have her up here and back up everything I'm saying, but the fact is, as soon as the people, all the cronies were out of the system, the guardian ad litems, therapists, everybody, the natural healing took place where her and I have to act as good parents to our child, and it's just grown from there. In fact, today is my day with my daughter, and I called her and told her I was coming to the family law committee, would you pick her up from school for me? So we've progressed so far, and as a matter of fact, one finishing point, her new current boyfriend, who she's engaged to now, hasn't seen his children for 2 years. So she sees it from the other side.
Representative one follow-up and then Representative go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan. So I'm trying to make sure I understand. Would you agree then that despite the coaching that your former spouse received, which was promoted acrimony between you and her for a lot of years, some act of God, which would have normally been considered a bad thing, your ex-wife's boyfriend's punishing your daughter in a way that was inappropriate, turned out to be a godsend, because your former spouse then saw that she had lost, or your daughter had lost, the love and protection of her father, and that brought about her change of heart.
I think there were a lot of things, and thank you. And you kind of said some things, God sent. I mean, I want to use an example. When I had my day in court, they had a eyewitness account that claimed that I go out drinking on Friday nights because I come in at 11 o'clock, every Friday night consistently for the last 2 years. What act of God allowed me to bring my church pastor to me? On Friday nights, I'd be at church. I cooked for the church congregation, and I cleaned up afterwards. That's where I was coming home on a Friday night. My daughter was held to me for 2 years on bogus, ridiculous allegations, wherever they were coming from, because people, the level of evidence in Mr. Edelblu's bill, I mean, that's the one part I don't necessarily agree with. I think our level of evidence needs to be held to a higher standard. It's got to be beyond hearsay, and this clear and convincing, I don't remember what he, preponderance. I think it needs to be a higher level. If you're going to strip somebody's parental rights away, you darn well need to have a good reason, and you better back it up with evidence. So, and Representative Leahy, as far as your question, had that situation not happened, I agree, things may have been different. She had a change of heart, maybe, and she told me in tears, this is so wrong keeping your daughter from you. It's like I wanted to yell at her and say, what the heck took you so long? But at the same time, I do believe the situation, I didn't want to disparage my ex, but she was raised in a rough environment. She becomes violent when she gets mad. She was arrested for assault and battery on me. I was referred to the Monadnock Center for Violence Prevention in Keene, New Hampshire. When I went there, the Monadnock Center refused to help me. They took her, the convicted batterer, by the hand, walked her through the system, assisted her in getting a lawyer to fulfill their Title 4D VAWA funding needs, because I didn't fit the criteria coming in there as a fit father, having a woman charged with assault and battery hauled out in shackles. So it became very confusing. It was a lot for me to suck up and say, hey, maybe I need some help. Maybe I'm not in the best relationship and I need some tools to figure out how to get out of it. But when they take the person that's already admitted guilt, charged and convicted, and walk them through the system, okay, I hope my tinfoil hat isn't showing, but I don't get it. And I understand the angry people that come in here, because we have to invent why is it possibly happening.
Thank you. Representative Itzy, you had a question.
Yes, I did. Thank you for taking my question. You made a slight comment that your wife had been motivated to exaggerate or fabricate certain allegations. Who made that motivation?
And I managed to allude to I think the first step was that Monadnock Center for Violence Prevention, formerly known as the Women's Crisis Center. I've gone beyond the male hate and the gender bias. I think that's an issue, but I do see, because I also, like a lot of us have got to know each other thanks to social media. And we realize so much of our cases are so similar. It's the same thing, you stir and complete, put it in the oven, and here we go, we're done. So we're able to communicate, and I personally have several female friends that have the exact same situation happening with them. And whether it's motivated by the breadwinner or whatever it is, maybe it's the person willing to fight the most. Sorry to get a piece out, the level, the reason, the evidence that they presented when that 2 years came along of why they acted on me being a flight risk was because they printed out a Facebook post that I had written to my father, who lives in Virginia previously. He was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer and was given 6 months to live. I had stated that I would love to meet him and I'd love for him to meet his grandchild. So that is what spurred, that's all they got, that's it. So now I'm a flight risk. I'm gonna give up my home and my business and run away from my other children, kidnap this one, leave those two behind, who knows? And before I had my day in court with my ex calling and saying, you know, this is so wrong, she allowed me to take my daughter to Virginia to meet her grandfather who was since passed. So when all that came in front of the judge, I mean, could he really make a decision, anything other than 50-50? Because it was obvious the whole thing was based on lies from the beginning. Had that been the standard preponderance from the very beginning, I think a lot of things, I've progressed. I know these people, Tom McCarthy here, 7 years he's been fighting. I'm on the other side of it. I have nothing to gain anymore by coming up here. I don't have a dog in the fight. But I see these good people hurting. And I want to keep coming up here, and I hope this is the time you guys will take proper steps and let this bill be a first step. Because there is a whole lot more that needs to be done. I mean, the guardian items need to be reeled in. I mean, judicial accountability, but start with the shared parenting. And let's fix it from there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further questions from the committee? Absolutely. Representative Bryans.
Representative
Madam
Bryans.
Chair, I just wanted to let you guys know that I personally know Ed, and I think that him being back in his daughter's life is the best thing that could have happened to her, because he is a wonderful father. He has been to my home with her, and if there was ever a case of wrong, that was it, and I'm proud to know you, Ed.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because previous to you being a representative, and I understand your reason for being here, and it means a lot to me, that you've met my daughter. And my daughter is very
Thank you,
active.
Madam Chair. If I may have a similar comment very briefly, I know Ed as well, and I just want to say from the committee's perspective, we're not lucky enough to have the only Ed sitting in front of us today. There's other Eds out there. Those Eds don't come here. They don't want to talk about this. It hurts too much. They're not willing to dig into the depth of their pain to benefit others like Ed's doing here. So he's not an exception. There's a lot of them. We don't see them before this.
I don't see where these stories, this bill solves any of these stories. I just don't see it. I mean, that's a discussion we're gonna
At
get
any
into,
rate,
but
we
I don't
do,
see why they're supporting this.
we do have one more speaker on this bill,
We do.
and then we can have these conversations. Thank you, Ed. I appreciate your
My pleasure.
testimony. I know that your story was difficult to tell. I'm glad that it worked out well. And if you could submit your testimony for the record, I would greatly appreciate
One
it.
question, I do have something, can I possibly go to the law office here and 50 copies?
There's no copy machine here, but
I can,
Representative Rice will take it upstairs and get some copies.
So that's testimony?
it was notes, but basically I
Okay,
followed
well, that's
along
good.
those lines, Representative.
Thank you.
And sir, I hope other people can compel you to consider this. And I understand my testimony may not have been directly related to this bill,
No,
but
it was. It was.
But I
didn't
just-
recall.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Representative, I apologize. I'm demoting you.
You're promoting.
Please, you have asked for 5 minutes.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is Keith Kidding, I'm the Advocacy Director at Child and Family Services. I guess I just want to start off by saying a couple of things. I am a product of divorce. My mom and dad were divorced, so I just would like you to have that background. Two, I am not plugged in. If I go back to my law school reunion, I'm probably one of the poorest paid lawyers that would be returned there. And I work for a nonprofit that does not benefit in any kind of way from any of our testimony or the idea that the best interest of the child should come first. So I guess if Representative Edelblut was still here, I would just like to respond to a couple of things that he says. First of all, we oppose the bill. Child and Family Services says, I do not see the bill as neutral. I see the best interest of the child as a neutral place to start. To me, putting a presumption out there that has to be overcome is not a neutral position. The neutral position is the idea that, and I had it right here, is that as the judge starts to put things back together from the divorced family, it says the inquiry should begin with the child's interests and work outward. So it strikes me that when you look at the best interest of the child, you're looking at kind of a blank slate, right? It's supposed to start with the judge looking at what is the best interest of the child. And what I see this bill is doing is kind of like this. It puts the child in the center here, kind of crumples it up, and it puts the best interest of the child inside this, which is now cocooned by the idea of presumptive responsibility, parental rights. And as the bill is written, what the bill allows is then the judge to have to figure out how he pulls away these structures little bit by little bit. Is there abuse? Is there neglect? And if he can't find these things, then there's the presumption that 50-50 responsibility is there. In my opinion, this bill is based on a false presumption of the sheer fact that it's written in a way that Representative Edelblut understands that not all children are going to benefit from 50-50 residential placement. He has a great number of things here that allows you to take yourself out of that. And I would have to say, and I was wondering if Representative Long was going down this path, was I think Janet DeFuco, it seems to me that she would be opposed to this bill. I mean, she was arguing that her child was taken from her house was taken from her, and under those circumstances, the judge would have to say, but still there's 50-50 presumed responsibility. So I guess I would just, it's been a long day, so I'm gonna make this short. But rather than the court investigating and make its ruling based on the best interest of the child, this bill would presume that joint physical custody would be in the best interest of the child. A one-size-fits-all approach fails to acknowledge that families come with an amazing array of strengths, values, traditions, and even geographic realities. I mean, I think it's easy to say there's a 50-50 presumption, but there are geographic realities that the court has to deal with. The court must continue to tailor their orders to the children's individual needs. Even in the most amicable of separations, a 50-50 residential custody arrangement is challenging and takes an exceptional work relationship between both the parents. Why then should we ask New Hampshire courts to mandate a 50-50 arrangement for 10% of the parents who have an acrimonious relationships and whose children are the least likely to benefit from this type of arrangement? Representative Douglas was right. This is a shifting. This is a shifting away from the best interest of the child to parental rights. And I would disagree firmly with his testimony that a child being continually around two parents that are arguing all the time does not harm that child. And so I guess what I would like to leave you with is just the idea that I think we've heard a lot on one side, and the reason I brought up the fact that I'm from a divorced family is I don't want the people here that have testified to think that I'm not sympathetic to what they're doing, but I believe we need a